I'd like to welcome everyone to the special meeting of the Guymon City Council, December 17, 2019. Please stand for the prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful day and wonderful year you've given us. Please continue to guide this council and this city in the best interest of the people, and continue to watch over us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Swagger, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call this meeting to order. Item 2, attendance roll call.
Living Good.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Swaker.
Here.
Alvidrez.
Here.
Egger.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Petty.
Here.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Item 3, public comments. If you have any public comments, you can come up. You have about.
I do.
You have 3 minutes.
My concern is that I'm on the committee, and we received this at 3 o'clock today, and this is not off of what we've been working off of. They're two separate documents. So the document that you're supposed to approve tonight is not the same document that we've been working off of. One of the requests that I had made for Guymon Public Schools is that in this TIFF agreement, that the money, the $220,000 that was supposed to come to the district, would come to us for our building fund. There's nowhere in this document that it states that. In the document that we were working off of, it does. What will happen is, if you approve this document tonight and the county assessor, whoever sends us the check, sends it to the general fund, I can't switch that back to a building fund. And I'm limited on what I can use our resource money with and for. So this concerns me, especially being on the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay. Item 4, approval of the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Egger.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Swaker.
Aye.
Alvidrez.
Aye.
Living Good.
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 5, update on abated/dilapidated property located at 2003 North East Street.
Hey guys, as my understanding, I wasn't here in November for the council meeting. You guys instructed Miss Costner and her granddaughter to make weekly reports to me on status of what they're trying to do out there. They have met with me a couple times in the past few weeks. They're attempting to make a land transaction to a couple buyers. There's a few issues that they're having to deal with right now. They actually exchanged money before they should have. They didn't have any contracts. They weren't aware of any of the laws when making these sales. They're currently working with a surveyor and possibly an attorney to make this land transfer possible. I'm not aware of the exact point of where they're at right now. I did meet with Brandy Costner today and her grandmother, and they have made some efforts to clean up out there. I did see it myself. Other than that, I can have any questions I can answer for you guys.
Do you have a recommendation?
I recommend if we don't see any kind of legal documentation by the next council in January, we would move forward.
Thank you. Item 6, discussion and possible action on approval of the Seaboard Expansion Economic Development Agreement by and among the City of Guymon, Oklahoma, the Guymon Industrial Authority, and the Seaboard Corporation, and its affiliated company, SBD. Item 6.
Mrs. Rhodes, is that the only concern you have as far as if we amend this contract to state that the $220 $220,000 per year go to the building fund?
Well, that, and I still don't know, none of our numbers are still adding up.
So let me speak to that a little bit. We went through some economic impact today to the school. Originally, we thought it was going to be what? 5 million to the school, and we think it's going to be closer to 7 now with the numbers, because nobody's numbers are the same. The schools, the counties, so yes, I think everybody understands we get paid ad valorem and property tax. Nobody understands there's also a personal property tax in Texas County. You don't go to the assessor anymore and pay your personal property tax. That's figured in your ad valorem tax, which raises the tax rate at which Seaboard would be taxed. So the impact's a little bit bigger than originally thought too. And I think some of that comes from everybody's working off different papers. That concerns me. And then the other problem with the TIF originally was not so much the TIF, it's how they're able to allocate the money. They can't allocate anything to the building fund. So I think we can all agree that has to be in there at a minimum. But it's interesting to me that we don't all have the same numbers. So, or the same paperwork.
Is there any concern other than the fact that it's not designated for the building fund?
The financials.
The business personal.
Please, can you please come to the microphone, ma'am?
And you're with the assessor, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a business personal property tax on there and that is assessed, which that means your computers, your desks, all that is assessed on business. And then we have the farm personal, and so the property tax, your refrigerators and your personal, home personal is what's missing. That is what we voted on and went away. But there is still a business personal tax on for all the businesses in Guymon.
I think the issue at the end of the day is, and I've got the paperwork in here somewhere, is basically 20 million is going to the property assessment. 80 million is going to the personal property tax, correct?
I have not.
Which is 100 million, but your guys' paperwork shows 92 million. So in the contract, we're showing 100 million.
Well, the 92 million is the difference between what is already built and out there to what is going to be built.
Right.
Because what is already built will have to be taxed. And that's the difference between what is already out there that has been built to what is going to be built. The 92 million is basically what we're thinking is going to be built from the 110 million.
Right, and the contract that we're being asked to approve tonight is for 100 million, 20 and 80. So it doesn't match your numbers, is what we're getting.
Let me clear that up. If the property is assessed under the guidelines of the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and if it comes in and it is assessed at only 80 million total, that doesn't affect the validity of the project or the contract. It simply will produce less funds. But under the contract, the school, regardless of the assessment, the school will receive $220,000. My thought would be if the major concern is the fact that the 220 is not designated for the building fund, the contract could be approved subject to the amendment to designate that those funds would be allocated to the building fund. Now, I'm advised by the attorney that knows more about TIFF than any attorney in the state of Oklahoma. The contract as drawn, the 220,000 could be allocated to the building fund. But if there's a concern by the superintendent of the school board, the contract could simply be amended to designate that 220 would be designated for the building fund.
Because we get the 175,000 right now, it all goes to the general fund. So if I don't have it in writing, and let's say Judith is gone in 3 years, then the new person comes in, is just going to send the money to the general fund, because it starts there.
No, that my recommendation, what I was suggesting was to satisfy your concern, the contract could be approved subject to the amendment that the $220,000 payment would be designated to the building
But
fund.
I guess, and I appreciate that.
Mrs. Rhodes, can you please come to the front, please? Sorry, thank you.
But my concern, I guess, now is the fact that we've been working off of two separate documents. That concerns me greatly, because when we received this document, it was in there. Then at 3:08 today, we received this document. So as a committee member also, I'm concerned, what all have I not found in this document that we agreed to in this proposal?
I think the proposal that you got this afternoon incorporates everything that's in the project plan.
It does not, because it
It
didn't have it
references the project plan.
But it doesn't talk about where we're gonna allocate the money.
If you remember the discussion in the review committee, we wanted to give as much flexibility to the schools as possible. We said that 220 would be coming to the schools. It wouldn't be attached to any calculation in state aid to the schools, and you would have $220,000 to use for whatever purpose you wanted to. You and Mike Ray were discussing that you would like to get it into the building fund, and that was fine by the review committee. The review committee was giving you total flexibility on how you wanted to allocate those monies. And it would come to you just like the 175 came to you, other than it is unrestricted.
It has to be designated to a fund. That's the whole purpose of me coming back and saying.
We did not understand that.
But we did, because we got it back in this document that we've been working off of as a proposal of the committee. But then when we get this to be enacted tonight, it's nowhere in there. So that's my number one concern. Obviously,
The 220 comes to you annually, and you can use that for whatever purposes you want.
but if it's not documented in what is enacted, I cannot, because we've went back and looked at all of our previous checks.
She can't just move money from
I
the general
can't
fund to the
move
building
money.
fund.
No,
And
no,
it
what
all
I'm-
came to us in the
No,
general
no,
fund.
what I'm saying is the money that's generated out of the TIF district comes to you, and you can allocate to wherever you
No, I
want.
cannot, because when we get the check from the city, from the county, it says general fund on the stub.
I thought we addressed that.
So you won't be getting a check from the county, you'll be getting it from the Guymon Industrial Authority.
But it comes all through the assessor, and it comes back and it says general fund on it. And I would have brought a copy tonight if I didn't know.
So if, I'm gonna ask the question, and I think it's been asked a couple of times. So if we would amend the motion to state that all funds would be paid to Guymon Independent School District to their building fund, would that satisfy what you're asking for?
On this, yes, on this
That's what-
statement, on
that's
this
what I'm
statement,
saying.
yes.
We can
Yeah.
amend the.
We can do that.
We can amend the deal and state that it would go to the building fund, if that's your discretion.
But to her point, I'm not sure that we still understand the impact to the school to be able to vote on the numbers correctly. Because everybody has different numbers. I've got 3 sets of numbers right here in front of me.
We're
Which
gonna
got brought
have,
up today after we.
Yeah,
we're
which
gonna
is-
end up with different numbers at the end of next year.
So why is that? I mean, I'm not.
Because of
for it,
how
I
it's
just-
assessed. We don't know for sure exactly how it's gonna be assessed.
But I thought we just assessed the old part.
Well, the old part goes on the tax rolls as of January 1st.
It's the increment that hadn't been assessed.
Yeah, it's the new increment that we're trying to pass.
Is that
That's-
2.5% that's in that?
No, that 2.5 is how the allocation.
It's an
of-
increment that's in there in the literature.
Yeah, it's the allocation.
But
of the
nobody
dollars.
really knows what that new is going to be assessed at. They have approximations, the 100 million, the 92 million, but all that really is a guesstimate in reality. It's not been assessed yet.
Well, at the OML conference, I went to a session on TIFs. And the increment, and that's what's going to finance all this. They showed a graph, a PowerPoint, just put that with PowerPoint. And it showed, and they said, and they brought it out, that the increment from the time you start one, the increment can increase, or it could decrease, but generally it's mostly all increase. So it's not a concrete number when you start the deal. It can slide upwards as the project goes forward, or as the assessor comes out and reassesses for the increment. Is what I.
So what does that mean?
Well,
It's a fluid number.
it's a fluid number.
Dynamic.
The increment, in other words, when you set up a TIF district, there's nothing in it at the word go that says we're guaranteed that it's only going to be X number of dollars.
Right.
That starts out, and our estimation is that it's a certain amount of money, but that estimation generally is done to err on a little bit lower side from what this attorney said, and then generally they go up. So that throws more money into the increment that's available for these other things.
I mean, you can look at your property, your personal property taxes on your house.
What?
There, you know, there's no guarantee next year is gonna be the same amount you pay this year.
I understand we want to pass this as a city, and it's going to help us, and we think it's going to help the school, but let's just be real for a minute. I'm not for or against it, but I graduated in 1993 with 800 students. They now have 3,300 students. They have 30, I don't know how many languages?
37.
37 languages, which all take an ESL teacher. So the economic impact to the Guymon school system is much, much different than somewhere else. So I don't want to be the guy who has to stand up in public and say, I got this wrong in 10 or 15 years. I don't know how you guys feel. I'm not for or against it. I'm all for being a good neighbor, and if we can win by getting a wastewater treatment station, if the school can win through this, I'm all for it. But I don't know, I don't have enough resources within me. I wanted to do what the committee said, but then they got the contract today at 3 o'clock, and they're calling and saying, this isn't what we looked at. I think Paul Montgomery would probably agree. I know he was on the committee.
Mr. Ray as well.
Mr. Ray was on there, and they got that at 3 today and want us to make a decision. It seems, as I can tell you, if I was sitting in the public, I'd feel a little sketchy about the deal.
And that's a whole, 6 weeks ago, that's why we implemented a committee. But when we don't give the committee the final paperwork, to me, that just seems wrong.
Well, the committee's job was to make a recommendation.
Right.
Okay, so they
not
made a
have-
recommendation, but they didn't get the final paperwork until today.
We didn't either.
Well, you wouldn't have had the final paperwork 6 weeks ago.
To me, that just seems wrong.
You got the final paperwork this afternoon because Seaboard signed it today. Remember, at our meeting last week, we tabled this economic development agreement because Seaboard hadn't approved it yet. And so we waited until yesterday. I think they signed it late yesterday. We sent you out a copy of that today. And so that's why it was tabled. That's why you didn't have it last week. We thought about sending you a draft, but we thought we'd better not do that because there might be amendments or changes before Seaboard signed it. So
it just seems a little odd that the committee that was for that, 5-2, right? And the 2 was because they abstained. And it just feels a little odd they didn't get a copy.
Well, they got a copy of the project plan. That's what they approved. They approved the project plan, which outlines the scope of the project. It allocates percentages, certain percentage to be given to the schools, a certain percentage to the city, a certain percentage to be split between the county and the health department, and the 2.5% was the percentage to allocate to administrative services and costs of implementing the program. And they all got the final copy of that project plan. So the numbers haven't changed in the project plan. That chart is the same chart that's in the project plan. That shows that with the TIF, the schools benefit greatly. Without the TIF, they don't. The difference there is about $3.5 million. So if the TIF doesn't get approved, then they lose that benefit. The city loses a benefit of $3 million that can be used for improvements at our wastewater treatment plant. So there's $7 million that we stand to lose by not passing this. Whether you, I think David's suggestion of making an amendment so that we satisfy the public schools, I think that's the prudent thing to do. But it's just like a.
So I want to go back to this though. Those numbers don't match the county's numbers that don't match the school's numbers on this TIF. That's the part I don't know how to explain that any simpler than that. Nobody matches.
I don't know why it doesn't match the school's numbers because
that doesn't show a $5 million deficit. And
I can't argue that point. I can tell you that the superintendent and member of the school board was on the review committee, and they agreed with those numbers.
We didn't agree with the numbers. We agreed that we would be willing, it's a give and take.
Right.
And we want to be good partners with the
Right.
city and with Seaboard. So in that, we decided to do a give and take. It
Right.
doesn't mean that we agreed with the numbers on the screen, because we don't. But we were willing to negotiate and do what we could, so this would be somewhat of a win-win for everybody. But over a 25-year period, the district will lose close to $5 million.
I think the agreement was over how those monies, estimated revenues would be shared, and that's
Correct.
where the agreement was.
Yes.
And the agreement was, on the part of the city, was that we would be last in line.
Correct.
That any shortfall that dropped your allocation below $220,000 would be subtracted or deducted from the city's share. That was
That part is
That was the
correct.
agreement, and the numbers will change a little bit year to year over the course of that 25 years. The reason why you have a 25-year TIF is because if you have to borrow money to do something, Seaboard may have to borrow money to pay the city the $3 million to upgrade our plant. So most of those bond issues are 20 to 25-year terms. So that's why it's a 25-year TIF. And I can tell you the same thing happens not only with TIFs, but if you passed a bond issue for street improvements and your funding source is sales tax, you don't know what sales tax is going to do over 25 years. You're saying, we think the revenue source for sales tax, for this bond issue is sales tax. If the sales tax doesn't meet the estimated revenue stream to pay the debt, then we will pay it with utility revenues. The utility revenues are the backstop for all these other long-term. You're basically trying to estimate what those revenue streams are going to be over 25 years. You just don't know. You have an educated guess based on the history of what you've been collecting for the last 20 to 25 years, and you're guessing that the economy over 25 years is going to be fairly stable. So that's the best you can do.
Any other discussion?
So I have one more question. So if Seaboard does, the TIF district is a footprinted area, correct?
Yes.
So if they do another expansion to the kill floor, does that fall into this or not?
I think the project improvements have already been designated. You could do a TIF number 3. You can do TIF.
I don't think we're there yet.
No, but what I'm saying is that if they decided they needed a really expensive piece of equipment,
it's laid out in phases on the
you
contract.
can, you can draw a line. You can draw a line around this room and have a TIF.
But what it does do, Mitch, so you understand, and you're right, there's going to be opportunities all through the next 25 years. We're going to do expansions, but not necessarily building expansions.
Right.
We're going to spend probably $10 million a year, which we have the last 20 years I've been here, in capital improvements inside the plant. The direct benefit is to the school through the state, because from the manufacturer's tax credit I'll get, they still get it. The school still gets it through the county every year, regardless if it's in the TIF or not. Does that answer your question? As far as the 100 million, it's 100 million. Yeah. I can show you the receipts. I'd write the checks. It's
I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing.
Whether the county comes up to 91 or 92, it's 100 million.
What I think is we passed the first TIF. This is my fear for 25 years.
25 years in play.
And the school has exponentially grown. I just don't want to put the school in the same bind that we're, right, that's my fear.
No, and I totally understand that.
That's my fear.
But you're also making just like Larry has already said, each year the TIF is gonna fluctuate as far as what you pay in, right? I can go back and show you records. There's one year we paid over $4 million. Now the next year, it was probably only 200 grand.
Yeah.
But then on average, it's over $1 million gets paid into that every year.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm not arguing that.
And also, this project is talking about adding 160 jobs, not 1,500 that was happening 25 years ago. And that makes a lot of difference too. In the reality, you're not going to get the influx like we had 25 years ago when they first opened the plant.
Yes, please come up.
Yeah, but you can't really say that. You can't tell what the future holds.
I am one of them that voted no on that. I'm one of the committee members. And the reason I voted no is because I didn't have enough information. I didn't feel I had enough information to vote on it, and looks like I was proven right. To me, I don't know if any of you guys have seen the AG's opinion on how the valuation possibly could go. And the Tax Commission indicates that we should, when whatever is out there currently and there's functional, and functional doesn't mean that it is working, functional mean that it can work. We will have to put that on the tax base for 2020. If it's sitting out there right now and it's functional, well, we believe that we'll have to do that. And if we do that, it looks to me like, and to us, like the valuation or the TIF side of it would only be in the that would be pushing it possibly $20 to $25 million range, not the $100 million range, because there's a considerable amount that's already there that possibly could go into that. And what we're looking at is the possibly. That's the information that I have. If you guys would like to
You say functional, is it based on the function they want to use it for?
If the way it was explained to us, if the refrigeration units are mounted on the roof, are ready to go, all they need to be is hooked up. They are functional. They are not functioning. They are functional, and that is the one of the concerns. And it's not from the county side. We're trying to protect the city side to make sure that there's enough money to fund the TIF if you go ahead and do it. And that's all we have to say. But if you guys want a copy of this, I'd be more than happy to give it to you. I don't know if did you?
Yeah, that won't affect the validity of the project. What it could do is that it would produce less increment.
Right. It would be less. The TIF money would be less, and therefore it would create less.
What will happen is notes will be issued up front.
Right.
Seaboard will buy the notes.
Right.
And the notes will be paid off with these increments over the years. Under the terms of the project agreement and the terms of the notes that will be signed, if at the end of the 25 years the notes are not paid off, Seaboard suffers that deficiency. There's no liability of the city or the authority. So
right.
if it's correct that there's only $20 million that is assessed for the increment, it's true that will produce less money, but it won't affect the validity of the project.
Right.
And the only entity that would have a negative impact from that at the end of the 25 years would be Seaboard, because they wouldn't get all of their money back that they'd loaned out when they bought the notes.
Well, what we're trying to avoid is any confrontation between the county, city, and Seaboard. If we go in to value it, and it values that, and it does drop the value of the TIF, that's all we're trying to avoid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to just point out that we had that discussion with our attorneys over the last 2 weeks. Out of the $100 million that we estimate of the improvements, there was only about $750,000 that was deemed to be usable and would be placed into the increment base. So $750,000 out of a $100 million investment, I think, is fairly small.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Seaboard Expansion Economic Development Agreement by and among the City of Guymon, Oklahoma, the Guymon Industrial Authority, and Seaboard Corporation and its affiliated company, SBD Incorporated.
Does that include the amended language?
I forgot the amended language. Make a motion to approve the Seaboard Expansion Economic Development Agreement by and among the City of Guymon, Oklahoma, the Guymon Industrial Authority, and Seaboard Corporation, with the amended that the $220,000 per year to the school will be directed towards the building fund.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Alvedras,
Aye.
Living Good.
Abstain.
We've got 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Item 7, discussion and possible action on approval of ordinance number 861, an ordinance dissolving tax increment district number 1, City of Guymon, created by the approval of the Guymon Seaboard Economic Development / Seaboard Project Plan by Ordinance 526 on December 9th, 1992, terminating as of December 30th, 2019. The tax apportionment financing authorized by the project plan and ordinance number 526, providing that the Guymon Industrial Authority pay unpaid authorized project costs, if any, from the remaining balance of the apportionment fund until all such funds have been dispersed, providing for severability and declaring an emergency.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 861.
Were you wanting to say something?
Oh, just a footnote, the final payment has been made, warrants have been issued, and there were sufficient funds, adequate funds to pay off the bonds, so the final balance on TIF number 1 is 0. So that one, from the funding standpoint, from the bonding standpoint, that one worked out well.
This is a motion just to terminate. I'll
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Alvedras.
Aye.
Living Good.
Abstain.
We've got 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
I'd like to declare it an emergency.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Alvedras.
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Living Good.
Abstain.
We've got 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Item 8, discussion and possible action on approval of ordinance number 862, an ordinance approving and adopting the Guymon Seaboard Expansion Economic Development Project Plan pursuant to the Oklahoma Local Development Act, designating and adopting project area and increment district boundaries, confirming the establishment of a date for the creation of the increment district number 2, City of Guymon, adopting certain findings, authorizing the Guymon Industrial Authority to carry out and administer the project plan, establishing a tax apportionment fund, declaring an apportionment funds to be special funds of the city of the Guymon Industrial Authority, authorizing the use of increment revenues for the payment of certain project costs, authorizing the city of Guymon to carry out certain provisions of the project plan, ratifying and confirming the actions, recommendations, and findings of the Guymon Seaboard Expansion Project Plan Review Committee and the City of Guymon Planning Commission, directing, continuing apportionment, providing for severability, and declaring an emergency.
I have a question. Do we need to add language about where the money can go to the building fund, or is that already taken care of?
No, the agreement's already been affirmed, so this will be affirming the agreement subject to as it was amended, so.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 862.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Alvedras.
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Living Good.
Abstain.
We've got 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Make a motion to declare it an emergency.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Alvedras.
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Living Good.
Abstain.
We've got 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Item 9, discussion and possible action on approval of resolution 19-11, adopting the operating budget for the 2020 fiscal year and authorizing budget transfers.
You have a new budget message and summary that we handed out tonight, and it's also in your packet, I believe. Excuse me, there's one change that I want to draw your attention to in the middle of the page under capital outlay. Last line, under capital outlay is $1,380,000 for the soccer field. And that notation is to show that we have cash in the amount of $1,380,000 that will show up in your development fund for that project. And we'll have a similar budget amendment sometime during the course of the next year to do the same amendment for the Main Street project now that we have some additional revenues flowing into that project. And other than that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We already went over all this last meeting.
I think your financials are in great shape. I think your financial position right now is as good as it's been in the last 4 or 5 years. Of course, 3 months from now, your sales tax could tank, but right now, you're doing great.
I'll make the motion that we approve resolution number 19-11, adopting the operating budget for 2020 fiscal year and authorizing budget transfers, item 9.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Egger?
Aye.
Alvedras?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Living Good?
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 10, discussion and possible action on approval of agreement between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the City of Guymon for a transfer of US 412 from the state highway system to the City of Guymon jurisdiction.
All right, this was an agreement that was tabled from last week. Same recommendation. This is the initial step that we take with ODOT to eventually take over the maintenance responsibilities for both Highway 136 and for Main Street. And in the agreement, there's a provision that says that ODOT and the city will sit down and determine what improvements have to be made prior to the transfer of those improvements. And I don't expect the city will be receiving the section of 136 until the majority of the construction's done on the new realignment of 136. So you're probably looking at a couple of years before that would actually be transferred. And then on the Main Street one, I think it's important to take this step because we're now looking at making improvements. In order to make those improvements, I think at some point in time the city will have to have control of the right-of-ways.
Make a motion that we approve the agreement between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the City of Guymon for transfer of US 412 from the state highway system to the City of Guymon's jurisdiction.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Egger?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Alvedras?
Aye.
Living Good?
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 11, discussion and possible action on approval of agreement between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the City of Guymon for the transfer of a segment of State Highway 136 from the state highway system to the City of Guymon jurisdiction.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement between the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the City of Guymon for the transfer of a segment of State Highway 136 from the state highway system to the City of Guymon's jurisdiction.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Peterson?
Aye.
Alvedras?
Aye.
Egger?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Living Good?
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 12, discussion and possible action to appoint or reappoint members of various boards and commissions whose terms expire December 31st, 2019.
I make a motion to appoint or reappoint members of the various boards and commissions whose terms expire December 31st, 2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Peterson?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Egger?
Aye.
Alvedras?
Aye.
Living Good?
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 13, discussion and possible action on approval of budget amendment number 4 for the general fund for $8,393.
This is a transfer from the GUA into the pool department, $8,393.
Make a motion that we approve budget amendment number 4, general fund, $1,393. Item 13.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Swager,
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Alvedras,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Living Good.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes.
Item 14, discussion and possible action on approval of budget amendment number 3 for the Guymon Development Fund for an increase of $400,000.
This is the item that we discussed a little bit under the budget item. This is the transfer, budget amendment transfer of hotel motel money to the development fund to match the donations and revenues provided by the Nash Foundation.
I'll make a motion that we approve budget amendment number 3 for the Guymon Development Fund, increase $400,000. Item 14.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Egger?
Swager,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Alvedras.
Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Living Good.
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 15, discussion and possible action on approval of budget amendment number 1 for the pool slash recreation fund for an increase of $8,393.
This is a budget amendment from the general fund into the pool fund.
Make a motion that we approve budget amendment number 1, full recreation fund for $8,393. Item 15.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Egger,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Alvedras,
Aye.
Swager,
Aye.
Living Good.
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 16, reports from city manager and council members.
Attached to your agenda is the proposed meeting schedule for next week, next year. You have no meeting scheduled next week. Okay, just to be clear.
Just one
And
on
we're-
Thursday.
And we are just one on Thursday for 5 minutes. The schedule is maintaining your meetings on Tuesday, once per month, second Tuesday of the month. That's all I have.
The city staff you have working on the approaches for the alleys?
Yes.
That looks really good.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
I've seen several of those. Those are really
Yeah.
well done.
Martin's doing a really good job. They're setting it up and then have a concrete company that's doing the pour. And they're
That looks really sharp.
really helping. Thank you.
Good job.
Just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
I've got a stove if you get any cold.
All right, we'll stand adjourned as the Guymon City Council. We will reconvene as the Guymon Industrial Authority. Call this meeting to order. Item 2, discussion and possible action on approval of the Seaboard Expansion Economic Development Agreement by and among the City of Guymon, Oklahoma, the Guymon Industrial Authority, and the Seaboard Corporation.
I think that's the wrong agenda. I think that's your agenda item for
Yes,
Thursday.
I pulled the wrong one up, sorry. You have to give me a minute.
Take all the time you want.
It's the bottom one.
Yeah, here. Discussion, possible action on budget amendment number 1 for the Guymon Industrial Authority Fund for an increase of $1,547,701.
Recommend approval.
I make a motion that we approve item number 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Peterson,
Aye.
Swager,
Aye.
Alvedras,
Item number 2. Aye.
Egger,
Aye.
Living Good.
Aye.
We've got 5 ayes.
Item 3, new business. Nope.
None.
Item 4, stand adjourned. Thank you.
Oh, God. What did you do? We tied.
Yeah. Tie goes to the winner, though. Hey, no, you gotta look out.